Today, January 2021, we read some interesting news on the internet. The Epoch Times says New York Stock Exchange begins to delist Chinese telecom giants in compliance with Trump's order. This is the title. Let's look at MSN.com, Reuters, NYSE, New York Exchange, starts process of delisting 3 Chinese telco companies. Okay, and then another, let's see on Bloomberg. Bloomberg also is saying NYSE to delist Chinese telco giants on US Executive Order. And it's dated on 1st January 2021. Okay, so maybe let's start with the Epoch Times. Actually, this is very reliable, let's say, source of information. So let's read it. I will read it right now. I will quote their words. The New York Stock Exchange, NYSE, announced on December 31st that it is in the process of delisting 3 Chinese telecom companies with ties to the Chinese military. The 3 state-owned companies, China Mobile Ltd, China Telecom Corporation Ltd, and China Unicom Hong Kong Ltd, will see their securities suspended from trading between January 7th and January 11th, according to a statement. Then we will look at the statement as well. So, I continue reading. The delisting proceedings were made in compliance with President Donald Trump Executive Order 13959. So 13959, number of the executive order. Trump issued the order, and we have PDF of it as well, so we can look at it, in mid-November, banning US investments in Chinese companies designated by the Pentagon as having ties to the Chinese military, citing threats to US national security. Earlier this week, the Trump administration extended the investment ban to any subsidiary of a communist Chinese military company. This is quote, any subsidiary of a communist Chinese military company, end quote. The extension was announced by the Treasury Department, which also stated that it planned to publicly list subsidiaries that were, quote, 50% or more owned, end quote, or, quote, determined to be controlled, end quote, by Chinese military companies. This year, the Pentagon identified a total of 35 Chinese companies, we could also look at the list of these companies, to have links to the Chinese military, formerly known as the People's Liberation Army. The designations were made under a requirement under Section 1237B of the National Defense Authorization Act, NDAA, the Annual Defense Spending Bill. We can also look at it later. The 3 Chinese telecom companies were among the designated 35 companies. Other Chinese companies included telecom giant Huawei, semiconductor chipmaker SMIC, defense contractor AVIC, rail car maker CRRC, and surveillance camera maker Hikvision. New York Stock Exchange added that the 3 companies have a right to review the delisting decision. MSCI Incorporation, FTSE Russell, S&P Dow Jones, and Nasdaq have all announced removing some Chinese companies from their indexes in compliance with the executive order. China's Foreign Ministry spokesperson Wang Wenbin, in a daily briefing on December 14th of 2020, accused the Trump administration of an unjustified crackdown on Chinese companies when asked about Nasdaq's plan to remove 4 Chinese companies from its indexes. Wang also accused the Trump administration of, quote, abusing its state power and national security concept to suppress foreign companies. On December 16, Senator Marco Rubio welcomed MSCI's decision to remove 7 Chinese firms from its indexes. And he said, I was proud to work with the Trump administration on their executive order to prohibit investment in Chinese military firms and MSCI's decision to remove these dangerous companies from their indexes is a result of that good work, Rubio stated according to a statement from his office. Rubio warned against any changes to future US policy. The senator explained, quote, "If any future administration were to reverse course, it would be a clear signal that they are putting the interests of the Chinese Communist Party and Wall Street above the interests of American workers and mom and pop investors." Also on December 30th, Keith Krach, Undersecretary of State for Economic Growth, Energy and the Environment, warned investors via Twitter about investing in, quote, "malign Chinese companies" by pointing to a list put together by the State Department. Quote, "The Chinese Communist Party's threat to US national security extends into our financial markets. Investors shouldn't be funding China's military or its human rights abuses," Krach stated. And now we can also read news about this topic on Bloomberg. I guess it was Bloomberg. Okay, so they mentioned NYSE, New York Stock Exchange, to delist Chinese telco giants on US executive order. What they say actually, I have it here highlighted, okay. The three Chinese companies have separate listings because we talk about three companies which are China Mobile Ltd, China Telecom Corporation Ltd, and China Unicom Hong Kong Ltd. So the three companies, Chinese companies. The three Chinese companies have separate listings in Hong Kong. All generate the entirety of their revenue in China and have no meaningful presence in the US, except for their listings there. Their shares are also tinily traded on the New York Stock Exchange compared to their primary listings in Hong Kong, making this NYSE, New York Stock Exchange, the listing more of a symbolic blow amid heightened geopolitical friction between the US and China. Okay, it's a big BS in my opinion, because if it would be such a tiny, let's say minor, no meaningful presence in the US stock exchange, I think Donald Trump wouldn't make any executive orders regarding them. Okay, so let's look at the Donald Trump's documents issued. Okay, there is also, let me show you this, NYSE Group actions to comply with Executive Order 01Jan2021, and it is on January 2021. Okay, so executive order, we can read about it here. Okay, so this is very important. Executive Order 13959 prohibits, beginning at 9:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on January 11, 2021, any transaction in publicly traded securities or any securities that are derivative of or are designated to provide investment exposure to companies identified as a communist Chinese military company. And they mention, accordingly, NYSE Group is taking the following actions. 1. New York Stock Exchange Regulation has announced that it has determined to commence proceedings to delist the following securities listed on NYSE. A is China Mobile Communications, B China Telecommunications Corporation, and C China Unicom Hong Kong Limited. So actually we can read about it here in this document. Okay, you can read it further by yourself. You can see also the link here above. In case, I can provide the links under this video, so you can read it to yourself. And now let me go to the document DOD, Department of Defense, okay, in the USA. There is this document, and the link also I will provide under this video. DOD, Department of Defense, releases list of additional companies in accordance with Section 1237 of FY99 NDAA. This release is dated on 3rd of December 2020. Okay, so you can also read it here. Today, the Department of Defense released the names of additional communist Chinese military companies operating directly or indirectly in the United States in accordance with the statutory requirement of Section 1237 1237 of the National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 1999 as amended. The department is determined to highlight and counter the People's Republic of China's PRC, military-civil fusion. This is very important also to remember that it's military-civil fusion. Development strategy. So, the department is determined to highlight and counter the People's Republic of China military-civil fusion development strategy, which supports the modernization goals of the People's Liberation Army, PLA, People's Liberation Army, by ensuring its access to advanced technologies and expertise acquired and developed by even those PRC companies, universities and research programs that appear to be civilian entities. So this is actually the whole thing about it, that they appear to be civilian entities, but they are actually not. The department released its initial list of companies to Congress in June 2020 and will continue to update the list with additional entities as appropriate. So for the list we can click here, then here and here. I already opened the 3 lists. Okay, so this is one. Qualifying entities prepared to respond to section 1237 of the National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 1999, Public Law 105-261 of the US law. Tranche 4. And the companies are the following: China Construction Technology Corporation Ltd, China International Engineering Consulting Corporation, China National Offshore Oil Corporation, and Semiconductor Manufacturing International Corporation. So now we have here 4. Then another tranche will be is the same section 1237 of the Public Law Fiscal Year 1999, Public Law 105-261, and the companies that are qualifying entities prepared in response to this section of the National Defense Authorization Act, the Chinese companies on the territory of United States that are actually threatening, their businesses is threatening the economy and the USA situation, are the following: Aviation Industry Corporation of China, China Aerospace Science and Technology Corporation, China Aerospace Science and Industry Corporation, China Electronics Technology Group Corporation, China South Industries Group Corporation, China Shipbuilding Industry Corporation, China State Shipbuilding Corporation, China North Industries Group Corporation, called Norinco Group, then Hanzhou Hikvision Digital Technology Corporation Ltd, which is called Hikvision, and then Huawei Inspur Group, Aero Engine Corporation of China, China Railway Construction Corporation, CRRC Corporation, then Panda Electronics Group, Downing Information Industry Corporation called Sugon, China Mobile Communications Group, China General Nuclear Power Corporation, China National Nuclear Corporation, and China Telecommunications Corporation. Okay, and this was, there is date on it, cleared for open publication on 12 June 2020 by the Department of Defense. And the third tranche is under the same law, under the same section: China Communications Construction Company, China Academy of Launch Vehicle Technology, China SpaceSat, China United Network Communications Group Corporation Ltd, China Electronics Corporation, China National Chemical Engineering Group Corporation Ltd, China National Chemical Corporation Chem China, Sinochem Group CO Ltd, China State Construction Group CO Ltd, China Three Gorges Corporation Limited, China Nuclear Engineering and Construction Corporation. And now I would like to read to you a document signed by the presidential document. I will also leave you the link, but I already downloaded a PDF of it and did some highlights, making it easier for me to read it, because I would like to read almost the whole document for you, because it is very important to know. Presidential document, the title of it is Exec.Order 13959 of November 12, 2020, issued on 12th of November and then federal registered on November 17, 2020. This is the executive order of the President Donald Trump. Donald J. Trump, President of the United States of America, finds that the People's Republic of China, PRC, is increasingly exploiting United States capital to resource and to enable the development and modernization of its military, intelligence and other security apparatuses, which continues to allow the PRC to directly threaten the United States homeland and United States forces overseas, including by developing and deploying weapons of mass destruction, advanced conventional weapons, and malicious cyber-enabled actions against the United States and its people. Key to the development of the PRC's military, intelligence and other security apparatuses is the country's large, ostensibly private economy. Through the national strategy of military-civil fusion, the PRC increases the size of the country's military-industrial complex by compelling civilian Chinese companies to support its military and intelligence activities. Those companies, though remaining ostensibly private and civilian, directly support the PRC's military, intelligence and security apparatuses and aid in their development and modernization. At the same time, those companies raise capital by selling securities to United States investors that trade on public exchanges, both here and abroad, lobbying United States index providers and funds to include these securities in market offerings and engaging in other acts to ensure access to United States capital. This is very serious actually, guys. This is very serious stuff. In that way, the PRC exploits United States investors to finance the development and modernization of its military. I therefore further find that the PRC's military-industrial complex, by directly supporting the efforts of the PRC's military, intelligence and other security apparatuses, constitutes an unusual and extraordinary threat, which has its source in substantial part outside the United States, to the national security, foreign policy and economy of the United States. To protect the United States homeland and the American people, I hereby declare a national emergency with respect to this threat. These are the words of Donald Trump, the president, on this executive order. Accordingly, I hereby order Section 1A. The following actions are prohibited. Beginning 9:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on January 11, 2021, any transaction in publicly traded securities or any securities that are derivative of or are designated to provide investment exposure to such securities of any Communist Chinese military company as defined in Section 4AI of this order by any United States person. And the following actions are prohibited, so II, it's another action that is prohibited, beginning 9:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on the date that is 60 days after a person is determined to be a Communist Chinese military company pursuant to Section 4A II or III of this order, any transaction in publicly traded securities or any securities that are derivative of or are designated to provide investment exposure to such securities of that person by any United States person. So these activities are prohibited. These actions are prohibited. And then B. Notwithstanding subsection AI of this section, which are prohibited actions, purchases for value or sales made on or before 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on November 11, 2021, solely to divest in whole or in part from securities that any United States person held as of 9:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on January 11, 2021, in a Communist Chinese military company as defined in Section 4AI of this order are permitted. And then C. Notwithstanding subsection II of this section, for a person determined to be a Communist Chinese military company pursuant to Section 4A II or III of this order, purchases for value or sales made on or before 365 days from the date of such determination, solely to divest in whole or in part from securities that any United States person held in such person, as of the date 60 days from the date of such determination are permitted. D. The prohibitions in subsection A of this section apply except to the extent provided by statutes or in regulations, orders, directives, or licenses that may be issued pursuant to this order, and notwithstanding any contract entered into or any license or permit granted before the date of this order. And the date of this order, just to remember, is 12 November 2020. Okay, so then we continue. Section 2. A. Any transaction by a United States person or within the United States that evades or avoids, has the purpose of evading or avoiding, causes a violation of, or attempts to violate the prohibitions set forth in this order, is prohibited. B. Any conspiracy formed to violate any of the prohibitions set forth in this order is prohibited. Section 3a. The Secretary of the Treasury, after consultation with the Secretary of State, the Secretary of Defense, the Director of National Intelligence, and the heads of other executive departments and agencies, as deemed appropriate by the Secretary of the Treasury, is hereby authorized to take such actions, including the promulgation of rules and regulations, and to employ all powers granted to the President by IEEPA to carry out the purposes of this order. The Secretary of the Treasury may, consistent with applicable law, redelegate any of these functions within the Department of the Treasury. All agencies shall take all appropriate measures within their authority to carry out the provisions of this order. B. Of the same section 3. Rules and regulations issued pursuant to this order may, among other things, establish procedures to license transactions otherwise prohibited pursuant to this order. But prior to issuing any license under this order, the Secretary of the Treasury shall consult with the Secretary of State, the Secretary of Defense, and the Director of National Intelligence. Then in section 4 we find some definitions that explain what means expression Communist Chinese Military Company, and then other also definitions. What does it exactly mean? The term Communist Chinese Military Company means any person that the Secretary of Defense has listed as a Communist Chinese Military Company operating directly or indirectly in the United States or in any of its territories or possessions, and it's of course according to the law. Then also what it means, Communist Chinese Military Company, any person that the Secretary of Defense, in consultation with the Secretary of the Treasury, determines is a Communist Chinese Military Company operating directly or indirectly in the United States or in any of its territories or possessions. And the next, any person that Secretary of the Treasury publicly lists as meeting the criteria in this section to be a Communist Chinese Military Company until the Secretary of the Treasury determines that such person no longer meets the criteria and removes such person from such list. Then we have also explanation what means entity, and then the security, which is very important actually. The terms security and securities include the definition of security in the section by the public law, currency of any note, draft, bill of exchange, or banker's acceptance which has a maturity at the time of issuance of not exceeding 9 months, shall be a security for purposes of this order. The term also transaction, the term United States person, and then in section 5 we read, the Secretary of the Treasury, in consultation with the Secretary of State and as appropriate the Secretary of Defense, is hereby authorized to submit the recurring and final reports to the Congress on the national emergency declared in this order, consistent with section 401. And then the general provisions, the rest you can read on your own, and it is signed by Donald Trump, this document, this executive order. I find it very important, this information of today and what is happening with the stock exchange. All the links I will include in the description below my video so you can read. I strongly recommend to you the Epoch Times as this is actually a reliable and trustful source of information. I rely on them because they write the truth, whatever it is. Whether they are for it or against it, they write actually this, and so we can know the real facts as they are. So this is it. I just wanted to let you know this. This is very important at the beginning of this year. So you can share this video, like, subscribe to my channel, and let's stay in touch. Have a good year. I wish you all the best with the beginning of this year 2021. Bye bye. Ciao.